Hi all, welcome on Oleum for our first live show. So hello business world. The first theme is around internal expansion, and I'm super happy because I have a good lineup to essentially speak about that topic. Our first guest today will be Craig Fagan, who is a partner at the law firm Ashurst Perkins Coie. Second, we'll have Alessandro Verini, so Italian, who just founded his own company called Alpha GTM. He's an ex-iFeel, ex-LinkedIn, ex-CoachUp, so very strong experience with commercial activities. Following him, we'll have Victor Mithouard, who is VP Payments and Strategy at the fintech Mambu. Then Daniele Petrelli, another Italian, VP Global Sales at Remote. I'm sure you will know a company quite similar to Zidel, born in Portugal. Then another Italian, Francesco De Stefano, who is the founder and CEO of a deep tech company called Caracol AM that just raised $40 million with Omnes. And finally, we'll have Hillel Zidel, a partner and managing director at the growth equity firm Kennet Partners, based in London with offices in the US, which makes a specialization in sending great companies to the US. Without further ado, we'll welcome essentially our first guest today. So, as I mentioned, Craig Fagan. Craig, how are you?
Thomas, great to see you. How's things? Thanks so much for having me.
No, I mean, very good. I told you I had like a bit of a throat infection, so it's still a bit going on. So for a show where I need to speak a bit, it's not super convenient, but anyway, I survived. But no, thank you so much for being with me. I'm quite interested to have your views on essentially, I mean, super broad topic of international expansion, but I mean, you lived it through different lenses. I mean, from the outside, because you before working with that law firm, you essentially did that with like a scale up. Then you essentially worked on the expansion of that law firm in Europe, in the UK and in Europe. And you're also helping clients essentially go abroad. So you've seen the topic through different lenses. But maybe like to kickstart our chat really in 2 minutes, can you tell me more about Ashurst Perkins Coie and what it's today? What your practice does. I mean, what your usual clients would be. I think that could be a good intro.
Cheers, Thomas. So Ashurst Perkins Coie, I would say we're now I'll get onto the pre-combined firm, as we very recently combined with Ashurst, having previously been Perkins Coie. So we're now a top 20 global law firm by revenue. And what that realistically means is that we have whatever you need anywhere. So around 3,500 lawyers or so, covering 20 countries or regions. And the reason I mentioned the combination, so effective as of literally the 1st of July. So I think it's important to talk about the two cultures and the history. So Perkins has this amazing, rich, big tech and founder advisory history. So very first client was Boeing before they took off an airplane. Then he had Jeff Bezos and Amazon from the garage through to his IPO. And then a similar story with Bill Gates and Microsoft. And now we work very closely with most of the FANGs. So you combine that with Ashurst, who again have a really rich history in energy, renewables, and financial services. And there's a really interesting intersect there between founders, growth cap, big cap, regulatory, and bringing all of that together. So that it made perfect sense from a combination standpoint. I think in terms of my personal practice, so I work in growth capital. So that's the growth capital ecosystem. So working with great founders and companies doing great things, ordinarily from seed round onwards, but then also the growth investors and PE funds that are looking to invest at that size of market as well. So I felt it was very important to have perspective from both sides of the table to capably be able to help founders and investors alike. So the journey usually starts with a transaction. So we'll work with the founder, helping them raise capital, do M&A, whatever it might be. We get to the management team and the founders if we're not working with them already. And then our whole motto is that we are on the journey. So we're there with that company through the life cycle. And because we've got this varied experience in strategic exits, PE exits, every kind of buyout you can sort of imagine, it means that we're truly there from start to finish.
Okay, and so you essentially launched, the office yourself with 6 other lawyers. Just as a curiosity, did the deal with and the combination with Ashurst was already planned? Was it part of a bigger plan for them to expand throughout Europe, and they sent you as some sort of scouts? How did it work out?
Look, I think what you'd see in the world of big law at the moment is that there is a lot of consolidation. So initially, we were set up as the initial Perkins Coie office in London. And the view there was to take on growth capital and private capital and grow that practice through Europe. The Ashurst combination makes a lot of sense. If you look at the world map, we covered the US deep and broad, and Ashurst covered basically everything else. The combination is really for, you could call it an early exit, you could call it a quicker path to a broader client base, but the jigsaw puzzle really fits. So it's kind of a different outcome, but we will still continue to plow on and grow the growth cap and private cap team alongside any Ashurst colleagues in the same way.
Mm-hmm. And so as a law firm, and when you look at expansion, so there was like some sort, an acquisition being done. When do you choose between buying and building yourself, like organically, particularly for a law firm in the sense that it's very big, it's like a consulting company, so it's very much aligned with like the types of people you have. So acquiring another law firm is essentially hiring, a team with paying them like a good bonus to essentially come in. So, when do you decide to maybe send someone versus acquiring a local firm?
It's a good question. I would say, always culture reigns. So if you feel that you can preserve your original culture and grow out, and it's economically viable to do so, I think that's a good path. I think if you find a partner like Ashurst who share very similar values, who are very complementary in terms of their skill set, and sort of overnight almost, you can get, you can double your revenue as a combined force, you can double your workforce, you can add an infinite depth and breadth to your expertise that you might not have had previously on a pan-European basis. That made perfect sense for us. And I think the same principles would apply if you are a growth stage company looking to enter a new jurisdiction, right? It's like, do you want to buy somebody that is already in market? I think the question there is, does the tech integrate? Do your services align? Or would you need to be building from scratch? Does the management team share your culture and values? Or are you going to have to get somebody over there on the ground to ensure that everything goes smoothly? So we applied the same principles, and I think we came out as Ashurst Perkins Coie being the absolutely the best outcome versus trying to build that over time.
Okay, understood. So that's internally. So regarding your clients, when they are looking, for expansion, etc. So you focus on growth capital. So, the deal-making side, I imagine, which I guess often comes with plans, to go abroad. What are like the typical maybe topics? You see regarding that, international expansion, cross-border, going abroad kind of movement.
So again, I think, important nods to my prior life as a GC at a growth stage company, where I would lead on everything but the commercial side of the expansion. So the setup, the people rollout, the regulatory side, the contracting side, and so on. And I think, we expanded into Lithuania, where we got regulated. We're a UK-based business. We then passported and hired on a pan-European basis to ensure that we could sell there. We had an entity in Australia to serve Australia and New Zealand. We subsequently set up an entity in the US as well. So have kind of seen it all from like a regulatory requirement, cultural challenge, people challenge standpoint. I think for me, before you get into the legal and regulatory side, I think you kind of seriously need to look at your commitment to the region. And I would call this the human cost, right? So you see a lot of US flips at the moment. And part of our hypothesis for setting up here was Europe is an amazing place to start and scale a business. But you look at, I think, take PitchBook data, maybe 4 times more volume from a growth capital investment standpoint in the US. Founders want to get over there. There are better tax outcomes on exit. A huge English-speaking target market. But if you do want to carry out that flip and get to the US, for example, and you want to take US investor capital, there's often that requirement for CEO, founder, a co-founder to actually be on the ground over there to show real commitment, to show that you are investing in the region. So I often say, before you kind of dive into it sounds quite nice getting access to that capital and so on, what is your personal commitment to the given region that you're talking about? Are you prepared to put boots on the ground over there? Because that's often going to be a prerequisite to making money, being a success there, raising capital. And for me, that it's that emotional investment before you go into the legals, the accounting, the regulatory, and so on to make sure it's a success.
But so that's, I guess I've heard it a few times, like regarding moves to the US, but if you expand across Europe, if you are like a UK-based, scale-ups and you want to go to France, Germany, Italy, etc., it's not like, every year you will have to move, no? Or do you think that would be the same?
Absolutely not. I think Europe is seen as a block. I don't know if anybody's been to Slush, but I think it's probably, if you haven't, I would really advocate, by the way, probably the best growth tech conference that I've been to. But I think it gives a real sense of the unity on a pan-European basis from a growth tech scenario. And I think keeping politics aside, the UK is still kind of viewed under that umbrella. And I think more or less you could live in any one of those jurisdictions and serve Europe on a pan-European basis. I think we mentioned Australia, obviously a smaller market, but very advanced from a tech standpoint and a tech market standpoint. If you look at some of the unicorns coming out of there, obviously time zone difference, cultural distance, geographical distance, probably need to get somebody over there if you fancy that jurisdiction. But for me, the US, everyone we have spoken to, and we work very closely with our US team from a capital connection standpoint on this, but a prerequisite to a term sheet is, are you on the ground already? If you're not a US citizen, do you have a visa? Are you able to get over there and work there? And are you fully committed? Is it in your business plan? Have you got hires on the ground selling already? So that it is a slightly different proposition if you're looking to the US as opposed to just expanding on a pan-European basis.
Okay, understood. And so for you, what's the plan for the next few years? Because the legal space is not a non-competitive space. What are your? I guess you can't give your secret sauce, but what are maybe like the cards you intend to play in that space?
So I think on the tip of everyone's tongues, but AI and specifically legal AI. I'm sure people have come across Legora, Harvey, other players in that space. I think if you look at the capability, people would be burying their head in the sand if they didn't think there was going to be a big change in the way legal services are delivered over the next 5 years. I think for us, we have an amazing platform, an amazing client base. We are investing heavily in tech and already using it with our clients. And I think we need to be at the forefront of and get ahead of the market from a technical utilization and revisiting of the way people think about legal services. I think if we don't do that, we would fail. And I think anybody else who isn't doing that in the market will also fail. So for us, it's really ensuring and investing the time to make sure we're ahead of that curve, building on what we've got and keeping the head down.
And so what do you think about like competition coming, I don't know, from the US, from AI first law firms, really? Because they get, regarding expansion, essentially there is no boundary for software, and AI is in principle able to understand any sort of legal systems and structure, etc. So what do you think of that sort of competition?
So I think you can do it two ways. You can build it that way to start with, or you can hire the requisite tech talent that you need, and pivot in the same way that a growth stage business would when adapting to market conditions, from what you're doing as the status quo to what you need to do to survive and perform really well in this kind of new world. And I think we're obviously just doing the latter. We welcome the challenge, but believe that yes, legal AI can do a lot. But if I look at most of the time that I spend with our clients, it's like navigating really complex cap tables, working through diligence issues in a strategic way. It's assisting on commercial negotiations, and so for us, we understand that like the kind of stack it high and wide, sort of low value work can absolutely be automated or agentified. But I think I'm yet to see any AI tool that could help a kind of founder-led business with a cap table having a financial institution, a VC, a strategic investor, and navigating their way through a complex fundraising that way. So I think we see the inherent value in what we and other great law firms are doing, but do acknowledge the change in the business model.
Okay, and so serving Europe, I mean, I'm not a lawyer at all. I've never studied law. I think I was very bad in my law classes, to be honest. But my understanding was like you have very different legal system, like in France, in the UK, in Germany, etc. I mean, for you, based in the UK, I mean, and serving clients across Europe, I mean, how do you essentially adapt without having local presence?
So that's an interesting one. What would I say? So in the first instance, if I speak to my experience as a GC, so we were obviously a growth stage business. We were a tight and lean legal function. And what I would say is, although the legal systems are very different, and there are certain areas where they are extremely different. Take, for example, employment law. That's like, that would be very, very different rather between, say, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, UK. But other areas of law, so say if you take data protection, for example, its key principles apply across the board, and then there's some fine tuning or gold plating on a case by case. So you can have a pretty good sense if you've lived that journey, as we did in terms of our European rollout when I was on the company side, and again, working with specialist counsel in the first instance, you can have a pretty good sense of the starting point. And I think that's where you need to plug into a local specialist for a sort of quick half an hour to get a sense of where things are at. If you're rolling out contracts, and particularly where you might feel that there's a high liability or it's a high revenue opportunity, that's probably where you'd invest a bit of time on local counsel. I think if you take Perkins pre-combination, we would have plugged into local specialists where we needed that kind of support. I think now as Ashurst Perkins Coie, we're pretty lucky in that we've got a really deep bench across most areas of expertise, with flags in all of the kind of European cities that most companies are wanting to be operating in. So we're pretty privileged in that sense, and it's very quick for me to pick up a phone and clarify something where I feel there might be a substantial difference.
Okay, makes sense. Regarding like your clients, I mean, what would you say are the major like traits of I don't know, a founder, CEO you deal with who is talking about like going abroad, going to the US? What do you I mean, for you, when are you super confident it's going to work out well? And when are you essentially telling that person, are you sure you should probably think it through one more time?
Yeah, I think, what would I say? If it's still at what I would call the dream stage. So again, we pointed to the, say, 4x availability of growth capital in the US, and that's billions. It's 30 or so in Europe to 120 or so in the US based on last year data. I think if that's appealing, but you haven't yet been over there to test the market, to see where you're going to set up, candidly, to understand the cost of things, like when we first set up over there, our first hires were like it's extremely expensive to hire people in the US, given the differences in taxation and other benefits that we have here in the UK, and that mean that people are paid a more moderate amount by comparison. So have you really been out there? Do you understand the market? Importantly, can you hire the people to deliver what you need to deliver, and do you have the money for that? So for me, I would be a strong advocate of getting a short-term visa, getting out there, spending some time on the ground, really understanding what it means, talking to your network on the more operational aspects of what you're going to need to do, and work it through from there. 50%, 60% of founders we speak to have half an eye on the US as soon as they're set out. But until you've been there, until you've kind of done the groundwork across those headers, I think it's pipe dream. sort of.
Look, Craig, on that note, I'm sorry, we already reached the end of our time. I mean, it went, I think, too fast. So maybe next time we'll have longer slots. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was great to see you, and I wish you all the luck with the expansion.
Was great to see you. Thank you, Thomas. Cheers.
Bye. So next on the list, our first Italian on the show, Alessandro. Hi, how are you? Ciao.
Hi, Thomas. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So where are you now? You are in Italy?
No, I'm currently in Barcelona, based in Barcelona.
Yeah, true. I mean, completely stupid at mixing things. Alessandro, I mean, super. Thank you so much first for being with me. As a super quick introduction, first, congratulations on your new company. So Alpha GTM, which is still in stealth, but which you plan to properly start very soon. I mean, you led commercial activities at iFeel, CoachUp, Criteo, LinkedIn. So essentially a few big names in the tech space. So yeah, thank you very much. Maybe like to start our chat. I mean, can you summarize like in 2 minutes what you've done? Across all those amazing firms, actually.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Thomas. So first of all, I would say that I'm international by nature. That's also, I'm grateful to be in this podcast today regarding international expansion. And it represents the roles that they had in all those organizations. At LinkedIn, my last role was the head of new business sales for the enterprise field team. It was for LinkedIn Sales Solution, which was the business line owning the Sales Navigator product. In a moment in which Sales Navigator, nobody actually knew what it was, in Europe at least, while in the US, we were already making 100 million with it. Then I moved to Criteo. Criteo is a French tech company. I was leading the operations in Russia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East from Barcelona and few local offices, so very different motion. Then I joined CoachUp, which is a digital coaching platform that raised more than 200 million, and I was managing Southern Europe, Latin America, Middle East, and the UK for a few years. And my last role before starting my own company was a CRO at Hillel for 2.5 years. And I was actually covering the whole globe, even from a partnership point of view, while from a direct sales point of view, we were covering mainly Germany, France, UK, and Spain.
Okay. No, super. Thank you so much. And so you sold different types of, digital services and products. What would you say are maybe like the common aspects of selling those product? I mean, what is, what have you observed essentially? Some sort of, I don't want to say playbook because, there is not a single playbook, I guess, for everything. But if you had to, across your career, if you had to pick maybe 2 or 3 key lessons for you when it comes to commercial activities, and going to new countries, so new clients, what have you learned, really?
So, in every single country in that I personally operate with, trust is still king. Trust in the company that you represent, trust in the person that you are selling, and trust in the product. I wouldn't do any move in international expansion before I'm sure that those three trust things are in place in each one in each one of those. And I think these never change in 150 or 50 years ago, and is still relevant today in the I world that we are. Second thing, I think people buy from people, and a lot of times I think we forget about it, and the importance of building a true and honest relationship with the buyer, especially in a large enterprise organization where they put their face in front of everyone else in the company for the decision that are making. And be patient, because great things takes time, and it's international expansion, unless you are in a top 1% of the company that are the market pulling their product and services, very likely you are not in a must-have product, and you need to build a lot of the groundwork to ensure that people and company actually want to buy from you.
Mm-hmm. And how do you know which country to go to? What's the general process? I mean, let's say you are selling in France or Germany or wherever, and when is a good time to essentially think about a new geography? Maybe it's actually different product by product. I mean, maybe some products travels more
Faster
than others, and also like don't need specificity based on different countries or geographies. But yeah, when do you decide to go abroad? And well, you mentioned trust, but by definition, if I've never been to Spain, nobody would know me there. How do I start building trust? And it's also a process that takes a long time. And if you are like a, let's say, aggressive company in terms of growth, I mean, you may not want to wait, 6 years for people to essentially know you personally.
Definitely. The short answer is definitely it depends from the product and the service that you cover. But I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples. For a coach app, for example, which the solution was pretty standard back then and was very replicable, while the network of coaches was the localization power of the platform, we went very fast. In a year, we were able to generate already a couple of millions in the countries that we opened. We were aggressive in the terms of hiring. We went professionals that they had the trust. So professional with 20, 25 years of experience selling, for example, to HR leaders, they had the trust of the HR leaders. And if they were representing Coach Up, automatically somehow that HR leader was more willing to get to know us and to trust the company that those people choose and they're behind. Actually, I hire quite a lot of people from LinkedIn into Coach Up because they had that type of network. So that is one example. I feel, for example, that is a company that works on a mental health technology, and mental health from a legal point of view, coming from the previous conversation, is more regulated in every single country and is differently regulated in every single country. So the expansion is not as fast as it could be of a standard product, because you have to customize, you have to prepare the regulatory conversation. For example, in France, it's very different how mental health is bought versus the US, for example, or the UK.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. So dependent on the product, and so maybe do you have maybe some examples to explain what are like essentially the steps or processes? How long do you give? I mean, a lot of people are talking about those like 100-day plan after anything. You raise money. What is the 100-day plan? You get elected. What is the 100-day plan? So let's say like You decide to go somewhere else. I mean, what is that 100-day plan, if it makes any sense?
Yeah, for me, first of all, I usually always challenge why we're going somewhere else, especially now, why we're currently going somewhere else than our core market. Meaning, if today we invest, I don't know, €1 into our main market, how much is the return versus when and how much return we do expect from a new market? And this equation versus the incremental value of the valuation of the company of entering more markets. Basically mean a company that only work on a specific market and an international tech company. There are evaluation multiples. Whatever that is greater than the first equation, is already a good way. It's a good way to go. Then I'm a big fan of entering new market through industry expertise more than country by country. What do I mean by that? Let's say that we are currently having a product that works very well. This was an example of CoachUp in the pharmaceutical industry in Germany. So instead of focusing on entering into Spain and Italy, for example, in whatever industry, we start leveraging the relationship that we had with large multinational pharmaceutical company in Germany, get introduction in their countries, operation in Italy, Spain, starting working with those countries, create a community of local people from a German company, but still local people that have credibility in those markets, and started acquiring the services. And for example, and CoachUp was working well with them. And then we went vertically to acquire more and more pharmaceutical companies first. And that create the basis of the trust for that country in order to say, hey, even for other industry, if you're already working with company A, B, and C, very likely you are localized, very likely you are worth the standard of our company. So I'm a big fan of going into industry verticalization while moving outside.
Okay, so you're leveraging your existing network. I mean,
Always.
you essentially pick the industry that makes sense, and your clients and your network will push you down. And it's even about like, okay, where are we strong in terms of industry? And then you realize, in pharma, we can get access to those extra countries, and this is where you decide to push on.
And again, this is always in a product that is not in a must-have category that is fully pulled by the market. Okay, I know that now we have some example in the market, especially a few large hype companies. But for everyone else, I think it's very important to understand well the asset, the relationship, and the assets that they've built with the current customer base.
What do you mean pulled by the market?
I believe that there are. And I lived some of those moments at LinkedIn, for example. And again, it was I never sold the HR products of LinkedIn, but after probably 10 years in the market, it started to receive a large number of inbounds. Everyone wanted to use LinkedIn for HR services. Now, the salespeople were still important because what's the difference to make 10K deal versus a 100K deal with that customer? But people were reaching out to LinkedIn for the HR services. People were not reaching out to LinkedIn for the sales services. And that's what we have to build from scratch, moving from a nice to have to a must have. Today, the majority of a sales organization almost must have Sales Navigator. So what we were doing, myself and also a speaker that is coming later, is not anymore the type of motion that is there in LinkedIn Sales Navigator business unit, even though salespeople are still needed, but with a different challenge. So for me, pulled by the market means a moment in which the market wants your product and services because for a number of reasons, you have a high number of inbounds, Zoom during COVID, this type of pulls. Okay.
I mean, it's quite rare, no?
It's rare, but it happens. I mean, today, I think, for example, you have it in every company from SME to enterprise is evaluating AI LLMs model inside. Of course, you have 3 or 4 to choose from, but those 3 or 4 usually get a call. Now, salespeople are still needed, and the job is still hard to move from one to another. Actually, I have a lot of friends working both in Anthropic and in OpenAI. They tell me it's not that easy as it seems, but it's true that they usually have open doors. If you work.
So a bit going sideways, but what's the difficulty in selling something when someone enters your shop and say, I want to buy?
Is the size of the deal is how. So, for example, if today someone tells you, I want to buy, 10 licenses of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, just to go on an example, and you as a sales individual to understand why it's 10 and not 20. Why, for example, all the CS team is not using Sales Navigator. Why they're only seeing it as a tool for new business. Why they're not seeing it as a tool in account management. That's my challenge. Move from 10 to 20 because my target, my quota, already assumed that the new business, already assumed that every account executive they're going to speak with, they're going to have it. My challenge is to move to the next level. My challenge is to move to increase the deal size, to increase the payment, to have better payment terms. You have different type of challenges. They are not easier, just different.
Okay. And so what happens when your product is not pulled by the market?
You have, first of all, you need to ensure that you have a product market fit. And when you're sure that you have a product market fit, that you actually solve a specific problem that the customer have, it's about building that credibility, the trust with, especially with large companies, that you are an enterprise ready solution. Build and overinvest into the enablement of the sales team, because then how ready a sales individual, how expert a sales individual is, I think matters a lot, and deliver an exceptional customer experience. When they start, I'm also a big fan of piloting strategy. So we usually try to make it easy to buy when you are a nice to have solution. So the company can start working with you on a smaller budget, test on specific KPIs, and if those KPIs are achieved, actually moving into the larger and bigger rollout.
Okay. So from what you explained, like building trust, I mean, obviously knowing your local market, etc., I mean, it pushes to the idea of having people on site. And when do you actually choose when you have a team on site and when you are essentially remote with maybe no one, in Germany if you're serving the German market?
Yeah. So for me, I have a mixed opinions on this. I'm not too hard either way. I'm not everyone must be on site or everyone must be remote. I'm a big fan of to have the right person in the right place. So ones that I had, for example, for the UK market, very great salespeople based in London. They were very successful. But I also had two great salespeople covering the UK market from Germany, because for whatever of the personal reason, they wanted to live there. And told, as long as first of all you hit your quota, and B, whenever a customer wants you to be there, you are there. For me, it's fine where you're based. Now, generally, the type of especially enterprise level talent for a specific country is more likely that you find it in that country, especially in terms of connection, relationship, especially with the top 50, 60 companies of that specific country. I think it's more a talent pool for me than anything else.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense. And so, talking about expansion, I mean, sometimes you need to know when to pull back. I think you've had that experience before. Could you maybe elaborate on this? I mean, what maybe happened, like the context?
Yeah, for example, in one of my previous company, we have to pull out of the direct sales of the German market. I underestimated, me and myself and the founder, the complexity of the bureaucracy regarding buying specific product that are more that are legally more complex to buy, and you have a kind of a German councils, working council that were extremely painful to move on and to move forward specific deals. And this just takes for our investor too much time in terms to give a fast return, and then we decided to stop it, and we went through partnerships, led sales in that market.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the major difference between like going yourself direct and going through that partner, sales the network?
I did the majority of my career selling directly, especially to large enterprises. Mm-hmm. Today, especially my last experience was in both Criteo, but especially I feel was focused on a lot on partnership sales. I believe are beasts of a different animals. First of all, from a partnership point of view, it's very difficult to pick the right partners because or they're too small and they're never going to give you the volume that you need, or they are too big and the reality is that you don't have much leverage. Mm-hmm. And is a lot of the future growth that you're actually going to bring to them and they buy into you and the company that you represent to give you the chance to actually start. Again, usually on a small pilot for some of their customers, and if you deliver well, they're happy to move forward. If that works well, especially in the unit economics in today's world, is I personally think it's a very good way of scaling your business. If you just receive a lot of funding and you just care about top line revenue, going direct, I still think is possibly long term the most valuable approach.
Okay, and so last question, because we're already at the end of our chat. I mean, it's going way too fast. So at CoachUp, I mean, for example, your perimeter kept on growing. I mean, you started with Southern Europe, Middle East, Latin America, etc. I mean, how much of that growth playbook actually travels across different locations? I mean, is it something you need to reinvent each time, or I mean, you touched base on the very key points like trust, like building your industry expertise, but realistically, I mean, is it like copy paste?
No, I mean, I think that the core, we kept a very similar core in those markets. Meaning from the level of talent that we're bringing, the level of trust that we want in the community, and a few other things. While what we change is, and some examples are, we outside of Italy, Spain, for example, especially in Latin America and in APAC, we overinvest into local communities expert. For example, HR community, HR forums, so all these kind of things, because we were very far away physically from our teams, and we wanted to be seen as super local and kind of approved by institutional HR leaders and organizations from there. Also, in the UK was a very different, because UK probably is one of the most fascinating market that I work, is one of my favorite. And moving into digital coaching was easy. Like they understand why digital coaching was all about the size of the deal. So it was all about pushing what was actually possible for the sales team to think, why we don't work on $1 million euro deal and not on a 200K deal? How we can ensure that every single sales manager of that organization has CoachUp available, because the market was simply more ready. So we were at a different level. While, for example, in other markets, we were still more about education for few, or why digital coaching was a valuable option. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I should have asked this question, because you just triggered 100 different other questions in my head. But Alessandro, thank you so much for being with me. I mean, it was a real pleasure. And best of luck with your new venture.
Thank you, Thomas. Have a great day and good luck with everything. Bye-bye.
Thanks. So now our next guest is Victor Mithouard. Hi, Victor. How are you? So you are VP Payments and Strategy at Mambu.
Hello, everyone. I can't hear you, Thomas.
Can you hear me now, or?
No.
Okay.
I think we're having the usual technical issue. I can't hear you speak.
I mean, I can hear you perfectly. Nope. I think everybody can hear you. The beauty
Still
of
not, I'm afraid.
live.
I could hear you before, but not now.
I'm gonna have a sip.
My apologies for this. I'll try to reconnect. Not sure what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the first. For a first live, always have to have a problem. Alors, let's see what. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well, yes.
Excellent. Sorry for that. I'm not sure what happened. Usual logistics.
No problem. I want to say. Well, look, let's dive in quickly now that we're a bit late. VP Payments and Strategy at Mambu. So you are building banking infrastructure. You were born in Berlin, but now in Amsterdam, headquartered, if I'm not mistaken. But really, like in 2 minutes, can you tell me, us, what Mambu does?
Absolutely. So Mambu is a German unicorn whose purpose is to enable financial institutions globally to deliver better banking services to their customers. So we serve 260 customers across 65 markets with completely global world split, in our view, in 4 macro regions. We started in EMEA, but very quickly extended over the past 5 years in APAC, LATAM, and for us, NAM is a new market entry that we're investing a lot in. Our customers are regulated financial institutions, banks, fintechs, everyone that provides a bank account, that provides a financial service can be one of our customers.
Okay. And so who do you sell to? I mean, you mentioned banks, etc., but like in terms of persona, I mean, who do you speak to, generally speaking?
During the 2022, 2023, wave of Cambrian fintech explosions, we worked with a lot of fintechs globally. So, for example, N26 of this world, C24, Alibaba, all these companies that were built during that era. We work with personas that used to be initially the technical personas that were looking for partners to support them on core banking, on payment softwares. Now we actually seeing that the market's shifting with fintechs maturing. There are less of them, and so most of our markets now shifting to more established banking groups, where the persona there is more the IT director, the person responsible for architecture within the bank, the operational teams that look after the end-to-end operations for the banking and the banking group. So that's shifted slightly over the years from a very tech-heavy persona, which our product was designed for, to more IT buyers in the largest banking groups.
Okay. And so I imagine, I mean, like the deals are quite long. The sales cycle is relatively long for those sort of clients, regulated, etc.
It is. It's clearly regulated software. I think we're not subject to the SaaS apocalypse that's happening now. That we see protected from the AI wave. Regulated SaaS is a different industry. You don't just sell software. You sell expertise. You sell compliance. You sell trust. And with that comes the fact that every time you sell, you become a very sticky partner to the bank. But also when you want to enter a new bank, it just takes a lot of time because our projects can be fiendishly complicated. Mm-hmm. So, we're looking at projects that are multiple hundreds, if not multiple millions per year of AR, and sales cycles can stretch from 6 months to 3 years. So they are very long, and that means that when you think about go-to-market planning in terms of how you look at the return on investment of all your activities, you need to take that long game into account in how you plan.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And so when it comes to looking at new geographies to expand, I mean, how does that work? I mean, because very long sales cycles. I mean if you get it wrong, it's can be very painful to come back. So you mentioned that recently you expanded to Asia, LATAM, etc. I mean, how did you decide what countries or geographies to address first?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we took the problem a little bit the other way around as a company. We looked at what product primitives can travel. Like what's the thinnest level of product that can travel globally, and then from there you build your go-to-market working locally with partners as a go-to-market that can actually scale exponentially where the demand is. So the first wave of growth for Mambu has been that thin core. This is functionality that anybody in the world can use, so they can come to us and we can sell on a global basis with the help of local partners. So I think it's fair to say that there was a point where we did not make a choice. The market was coming to us, and we were finding partners on a project per project basis without making conscious go-to-market choices. Now that with the market flipping a little bit and we have to be much more intent in opening that market, we do need to make choices, and these choices, to your point, needs to be choices of conviction, because you need to have sustained effort in a market. We have a very narrow set of tier 1 markets that we really invest in with the dedicated go-to-market cross-functionally. And then there's a lower tier of markets where for us, these are more seen as reseller channels. So our solution can be embedded into solutions that are packaged and commercialized by local experts that have the network, the technical capability, the localization workforce, the development and professional services workforce to be able to serve the customers on the ground.
Okay, so you're going through partners to essentially sell the solution. But at what point do you take part of the sales cycle? Because I imagine at some point you need to enter the discussion.
The very early in the resale channel for us, the 3 things that needs to come together is, 1, understanding what's the differentiated positioning or offering we could have as a way into that market that could help us get into our customers. 2nd is finding the right resale partner. That's the single most strategic choice you can make in a given market. Who do you want to work with? And can these partners deliver? And then I think to your point is on the implementation. How do you make sure that from an implementation perspective, this is completely seamless? Most of the work in the resale channel for us is done in the upstream part, in the design, solution engineering together with the partner. And then it's a motion and a partner engagement that is a little bit more lightweight, but still important on making sure we continue to co-invest with co-marketing in given countries, that we align on event planning, but it's more tactical things rather than the strategic upstream solution design.
Okay. And so, before Mambu, I mean, you were at Numerals, same activity, but before that, you were at Reckitt Benckiser. I mean, you were selling consumer goods. Is there any similarities in selling? I mean, people. I mean, Alessandro, so our just the previous guest was selling. Even if you are selling to businesses, you sell to people. So, is there some sort of a bridge between selling Durex to consumers and selling financial systems basically to banks?
There is actually the commonality is that the retail and consumer goods is a B2B2C business. So you sell to Walmart, you sell to Tesco, that then sells to the consumer. And the specificities of the Reckitt of this world is what they do extremely well is they have both the B2B relationship with those big chains, and they then do the marketing that every consumer sees so that they drive people to buy the product at the Tesco's and the Walmart of this world. In that sense, the B2B relationship that these companies do, and they've been doing for 30, 40 years, is best in class. The way that they manage the category, they manage differentiation, they manage new product origination and launches is extraordinary because they've optimized it over 40 years. Like it's a very razor-thin margin business. That's very similar to B2B enterprise sales in a sense. It's the same dynamics, the same importance of the buyer relationship, the same medic approach to the buyer. You need to understand your buyer first before, at the same time as you understand the consumer. So a lot of that can be ported over. I think there's also an interesting side note when you come from a very large company that operates in a very structured manner, because that's the heritage of 60 years of operating as a company, and you come into a startup where it's complete chaos and there's no processes, there's no like common ways of doing things. You can see the value of large company experience. It's interesting to be able to straddle those two worlds because I do think the best.
What are like the key positives from both worlds?
I can maybe picking one because it could be a very long discussions from each. I think the large companies are extremely good at knowing how to make decisions. Like they know exactly how to make a decision, and they know how to make also very big decisions, with a very structured way. The startups knows how to make a lot of small decisions very quickly. The agility is the one thing that's fantastic in the startup world, and also the fact that because you haven't coalesced in a way of doing things as a business. There's a universe of the possible, but sometimes it's hard to take very big decisions if you don't have the founder at the helm that takes those decisions for you, because these companies don't necessarily have figured it out how to take big decisions.
Interesting. So you're saying like big companies essentially are good at taking strategic decisions, long-term strategic decisions, and the startup world is better at taking 100 decisions a day, but not necessarily good at saying we will go there in the next 10 years.
Unless you have a founder, a very strong founder that has that gives that direction, and that you can have in the best companies of this world. I think they have both, because the founders give the direction and they give the very strong view on the operating model. But I've seen many startups that I've worked with or I consult for, that this way of taking decisions sometimes is not clearly understood. And it can slow the startup down ultimately.
Okay. Well, interesting. I mean, I would have imagined that like people would say like big companies are incapable of taking like the decent decision. Okay, and so like when I mean, I guess in your space, I mean, like software, I mean, travels quickly, but you are working in payments, and payment rails are quite different, and the sort of infrastructure is not necessarily homogeneous in the entire world. So how does it impact, I mean, essentially your view on going to your new geographies, etc. Too?
I would also make the point that it's not just payments. We do payments, we do core bankings, financial products engines. Also these local, a mortgage in the UK is not the same as a mortgage in Germany. So you do have ask yourself the question on your roadmap as well, which country is you invest in. It all comes down in your prioritization frameworks and back to your product strategy. If you have a product that's market agnostic, and then you localize through partners, then you have to make less choices than if you were building those functionalities within your products, and then it becomes more roadmap dependent. Ultimately, the way we look at things is that there are a few markets, 10 in the world, where we really want to win. And in order to really want to win and go up market, we need to invest in doing things ourselves, in managing those products end to end. The rest of the world, our partners can help us. Figure out what are the products. We need to provide them with the right tools, the right orchestration platforms, the right foundation for the agentic workflows as an infrastructure, but the localization can be done through partners. So we split the world. We make choices on the countries where we really want to invest.
So how did you split the world? I mean, how did you decide on the 10 priority geos?
It's a great question. It's a mix of a lot of data points and then ultimately conviction as to where we see the not just the absolute market potential, but also where we see financial innovators building from. Like, for example, the UK is a fantastic market in that regard. The US is a fantastic market in that regard. But you do have markets which have systemic drivers for innovations, like, for example, Brazil, which has a lot of modernization in its payment systems, and that has created a lot of opportunities for fintech to develop. So it's a market-to-market approach, but we end up with markets where you maybe will not suspect the opportunity. Like the Philippines for us is an enormous market at the moment. A lot of fintech innovation, a lot of banks and projects there. So a mix of data and conviction is the answer. And it's a list that you need to be quite firm on, because otherwise you don't have the consistency that, to your point initially, the long sales cycles require. But we might need to pivot. I think, for example, the Middle East is a good one. Like everybody's on the fence on, how is it going? When is it going to normalize? When are we going to be in normal market conditions? And I don't think we have the answer just yet.
And so, do you have a team like focusing only on maybe analyzing like market dynamics, etc., like just to try to pinpoint what the next location will be, or?
Yeah, we do. Our product team looks at the market all the time for their specific verticals, and then we have go-to-market planning team that does this indeed, working in conjunction with the product team.
Okay. I think like the closing question, I saw you wrote something on LinkedIn, I think, where you wrote recently that Europe's biggest technology companies have stopped fighting the American cloud giants and turned themselves into sovereign wrappers, reselling US technology with a European stamp on it. I mean, where do you put yourself in as Mambu?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we initially we've been leaning a lot on the American clouds because cloud was something that an infrastructure that was owned by US companies. I think and we're doing slightly different on AI. I think we have more infrastructure on AI GPU capacities with the Mistral and Scale of this world. So we're doing a bit better on a second wave of equipment. Mambu as a company, we want to be able to embrace sovereign clouds because we think that's the direction. But we do not have a lot of options at the moment. Like we would love to have a European cloud champion that we could build with, but the harsh reality is we don't really have a choice at this point. None of the cloud hosting providers have anywhere close to the reach and scale of the American hyperscalers. So that's something we often debate, we often discuss, and there's a client pull on, but we don't have a straightforward solution. If we want to keep delivering the benefits of cost and scale that cloud hosting provides.
Okay, but look, on that note, thank you so much, Victor, for being with me, despite the little tech difficulties. No, that's okay. But yeah, thank you so much, and hope you all the best for your expansion in the Philippines,
thank you,
Thailand, etc.
Much appreciated. Bye.
Bye. So after Victor, we are having our second Italian national, Daniele Petrelli, with me. Hi, Daniele.
Hello.
Come vai?
How's it going?
No, not too bad. Thank you so much for being with me. Really, it's a show today which is half Italian. I mean, it wasn't done on purpose, but at the same time, my wife being Italian, I mean, I'm always happy to hang out with other Italians. Too bad we can't practice. I can't practice my Italian now, but would have loved to. But really, we don't have much time. I mean, I realize like those 20-minute slots are quite short. So you are leading global sales at Remote. Remote is a unicorn which was born like in Portugal. But in 2 minutes, can you tell me what you guys do in a nutshell? Even though I don't think it needs much introduction, but still.
No, absolutely. So Remote is an employment and payroll platform, right? And we have a number of solutions. And today we're talking about international expansion. So I'm mainly focusing on the solution that we provide for companies that want to hire someone in a country where they have no legal presence, right? And so in this context, if you think about hiring someone in a country where you don't have a presence, it used to be a legal project before you actually make it a hiring project. Like imagine, you are a company in Germany and you found this perfect engineer in, let's say, Brazil, right? Before this person can even start working for you, you will need to do the setup for local entity, navigate Brazilian employment laws, register for payroll, register for taxes, and then not just that, like you have to stay compliant on an ongoing basis. It's really not just the building of it; it's also the ongoing, let's say, maintenance, right? And that takes months and a lot of capital. And that's where Remote comes in. And, through our employer of record service, we become the legal employer of that person while the employee works day to day for our customer. And so we handle the contracting, the payroll, the taxes, the benefits, the compliance. So basically, our customers only need to focus on finding the best talent for the job.
Sounds like a dream. Sounds like a dream. Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting because you're obviously pushing the efforts to go to expand the remote business, but your business is to help essentially businesses, expanding their own team, which I think is quite interesting. Can you share maybe a few things on remote just to picture like the size and scale of the platform today? Maybe how many customers do you serve? How many countries? Essentially, how many people do you pay on a monthly basis? That must be completely insane. If you can give a few pointers there. I'm not gonna twist your arm to give like information you don't want to give, but if you have like maybe a few things, that would be great.
I'm happy to share more of how big this has become in such a short time. So we went from 0 to over 300 million in recurring revenue in less than 6 years. And this is an impressive stat, and I'm sure you can agree it's like one of the fastest to get to 300 million in history. But I think what I really want to share about us is how we did it, because there's ways and ways to grow and to become what we have become, but we've done it in a field which is compliance, where you can't really take shortcuts, right? And we took none, right? We took 0 shortcuts. We built all of our infrastructure from scratch. We don't operate with third parties, and right now we own over 100 legal entities in the world. And we have customers across all geos, industries, and from the very small companies that want to scale fast and move to another country, up to the largest enterprises in the world. So that's a bit the scale that we reached.
Okay, and so I was always wondering, like, being French, I know that employing people in France can be a bit tricky sometimes. But when like a company has a company employing someone through you has an issue with the employee, or the employee has an issue with the company, what's your role in that? Do you say we are not there anymore, it's between you two, or the employee would sue you and then you would sue the company? How does it work?
Right. Now, this is a key element of what we provide as a service. So as I said before, like, we are effectively the legal employer of that person. So that means all of the bureaucracy, all of the contractual administration, the relationship with the authorities, the taxes, and even the termination cases when they happen. These are fully handled by remote as the legal employer. And so you've mentioned in France, for example, termination is tricky. Employee might sue you for whatever reason, and in those scenarios is remote that basically acts as the not just the mediator, but actually the first responsible for making sure that all of the local employment laws are respected, and so we obviously take of course like a role in defending our customers when there are like some of those situations. But at the end of the day, we are in it with our customer, because we are the legal employer.
Okay, makes sense. Super interesting. And so regarding your operation, so how did you organize your commercial team? How many people do you lead today? Are they organized by region, by sub-products, if there are any sub-products? How did you organize essentially your commercial activities?
Right. So we as a company, we employ about 2,000 people globally, and about 150 of them are salespeople. And those are distributed across new business acquisition and expansion revenue. From a territorial division perspective, yes, we are divided into like big regions, so AMER, EMEA, and APAC. But for EMEA and APAC, we also go deeper into sub-regions and countries, especially in EMEA, where languages play a strong role for go-to-market. We tend to, be a lot more granular in the localization, and so we employ, people specifically looking after, German customers or French customers or Spanish or Italians. We do also have specialized sellers for each segment, from the very small businesses and startups to the largest enterprises. So we, despite being like a medium sized company, we have a structured sales organization, I would say.
And so, like, a quick question for you, like, how do you decide on launching a new geo? I mean, now you are present almost all over the world, but the more you grew, I mean, was it more based on, okay, we have a set of clients, we know they want to hire more people in Argentina and we are not in Argentina, let's open Argentina? So is it more, or was it more about, we know that there are potentially a lot of companies in Argentina hiring abroad, so for us it makes sense and we go to Argentina. What was, in what way do you analyze, markets, and how do you decide to go?
Yeah. So I have to say, I've been at the company now about 5 years, and this has, the way we took those decisions in the past is completely different than how we take these decisions now. We also went through hyper growth, right? As I share with you. So I would say that, this has changed depending on the maturity that we had reached for every year. At the beginning, I think actually, what is really important is that, our founders built this company from the get-go with a global mindset. Like, we never thought about, this product being like EMEA only, or, French only, or US only, right? So from the get-go, we or our founders built this company with a global mindset. We didn't immediately, bring it, international, global from year one. But the fact that, we were ready to do so, it had, an immediate impact when we made those decisions. Right now, I'm actually working on a, let's say, a V2 of how we categorize our countries into different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And we look at, a number of metrics like, total addressable market, current baseline. So, in some countries, we found organically we had, a lot of customer demand. And then so we look at that, of course, retention metrics. So, how are those customers staying and even growing with us after we acquire them? Trends, so year-on-year growth. We try to look if there's something that has changed in a particular geo that makes our product more relevant. Win rates for sure, because every dollar we spend to build pipeline, we want to obviously convert into revenue at a higher rate. Organic traffic from the website, really, it's like a number of metrics, and then we build kind of like a scoring mechanism so that we unlock the next investment based on all of these metrics. I would say that for a company that is undergoing the same, let's say, conversations and looking at expanding internationally, I think the good news here is that you don't have to make these decisions in the same way we needed to take these decisions 10 years ago, right? Like, if you want to expand to a new country, you don't need to commit to open an office or a legal entity from the get-go, right? Like, you can just use an EOR, test the waters, and when you have certainty that that new market is right for you, then that's when you go with full investment and own the
So are you saying that using remote is by default something temporary for a company? So I'm a company, I want to employ people, I don't know, in Lebanon or in Argentina or wherever. I go through you to test the water. Then you would actually at some point advise me, you reach like a certain scale, you should do your thing on your own.
Yeah. So if it's temporary or let's say permanent, it's not even like a strategic decision. It's more like about maths, really, financial decision. Mm-hmm. So each country has different operating costs to, first of all, open the entity and then maintain the entity on a yearly basis. As a rule of thumb, when you have more than 10 people in the same jurisdiction, that's when usually we start advising you to look into owning. But usually anything below 10, it doesn't make much financial sense to actually own your entity, maintain it, have local people to run HR and payroll, right?
So does it happen often? I mean, it feels weird to be in a business where you are telling your clients, "Hey, it's over. You should go," after spending so much time and effort acquiring them.
Right. Well, of course, we don't basically advise them to go to another provider simply because once they...
No, it's not another provider. It's just like now you don't need to do that on your own. It's
right. But once they build an entity, they will still need to run payroll, right? And that's also what we do for companies. So it's not that we don't support them; it's that more we advise on what's the most cost-effective way for them to scale, and also what's the most compliant way, right? Because apart from financial implications, when you have too much of a big presence in a country and you don't own an entity, then there is also other things that come into play, like permanent establishment risks and other type of mechanism that you just want to be protected. And we as remote, we take a very proactive approach.
Okay, no, so sorry, I'm stupid. I misunderstood. You're essentially providing like the full suite, but different sort of tiers and service support depending on the volume. Sorry.
It's actually it's a good point because the thing is we've become remote with the UR product, right? And what about and also how you got in touch with me and but in the last 2 years we've basically evolved into becoming like a full payroll provider. And so we provide basically solution to pay your people regardless of the contract you have with them. Like they can be let's say like a freelance, and we have a contractor management platform for those payments. They can be a full-time employee that you have contracted directly. We can run your payroll, and we can, of course, still do the EOR employees.
And so among your clients, I mean, as a curiosity, I mean, do you see them more like going through you to employ, let's say, middle office, back office functions, which they think are cheaper abroad, or as you mentioned, like very quickly, they, to test the water, so they're actually maybe employing like, commercial professionals in some countries to test the water, and then they push forward. I mean, what is the...
Yeah, we see a lot of different use cases. I think one that you mentioned, so the test the waters in a new market is a common one, and so that's when usually people want to put the first salespeople on the ground before fully committing to a full let's say local organization. So we hire a lot of salespeople on behalf of our customers, but I think the most let's say the most frequent use case that we help our customers with is hiring highly specialized people like engineers, people really knowledgeable on AI stuff. And the reason is simple. It's because, if you are a company, even in Paris, let's say, and, you need, a talent that has, some specific skill, it's obviously a lot more difficult to find that person within, the French Paris, or at best French borders. And different story is to basically fish for your talent, virtually from a global pool. And that's the main use case.
Okay, no, and so you've had like tons of experience in Europe. I mean, you spent some time in Dublin, Barcelona, Munich, Milan. So I mean, really across Europe. I mean, you've built and run sales teams I think in Ireland, Spain, Germany, but like really all across the place. So you are very much like a European product. What would you say breaks, first, with commercial playbook when you want to enter new markets, etc.? I mean, what are like maybe the key thing or a few things, I mean, you pay attention to? What are the things that are traveling across, countries? Like if you could describe very quickly your discipline, let's say, and where do you spend time essentially customizing basically the playbook?
Right. Yeah. Customizing the playbook is actually, it's actually the point. And, in my previous roles, I spent, time at LinkedIn, Asana, and now, obviously I'm at Remote. And I've seen, in the past, kind of the same playbook, right? Like, and I know a lot of other tech companies use the same playbook, especially Americans. So, they want to expand to EMEA, and, they tend to think as EMEA, as one basically big market and one big country, right? So that's the first thing that I've seen things go wrong, where, you just like bring your US playbook into the, the European markets, and you don't really appreciate, how different it is to, sell into Germany or France or Italy, right? As an example. So, I think what we used to do is, we had a hub, which usually was in Dublin, and now I've seen, some of these tech companies moving their hubs perhaps to Paris as well, to Amsterdam, right? So some in Berlin, and they still build these hubs to expand, within all EMEA countries. They have sellers based out of those hubs. But then at some point, this playbook kind of has a ceiling. It breaks. It's good in the beginning because it helps to build, knowledge. It helps to build the team culture and, your own identity as a company. But then if you want to crack the mid-market or enterprise segments, you just got to be in front of the customers, right? And so, for example, at Asana, we used to have all of the SMB sellers in Dublin, but then the moment we wanted to crack the enterprise segment for any given country, we would immediately move reps, in the main cities of that country. And I think that was a balanced approach to build, and knowledge sharing, cultural and processes, but without sacrificing, the local strategy and being in front of the customers, really.
Okay, no, interesting. So the more enterprise you are, the closer you need to be, roughly.
The TLDR, I would say.
Okay. Well, Daniele, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to have you on board. And good luck with everything really at Remote, and best of luck.
Of course. Thanks so much, Thomas. And thanks for having me.
Ciao. Thanks.
Bye.
And now, so I mean, our third Italian on the show today, Francesco. How are you? Ciao. Buongiorno.
Ciao, thank you for inviting me. All good.
But thank you very much for accepting the invitation. Really, it's a bit like when you organize a party, you send invitation and then you are like this.
Happy to be part of the party.
But look, no, thank you so much for being here. So you're the founder and CEO of Caracol AM. So you're based in Milan. You recently raised, I think, $40 million with Omnes Capital, which was last year.
Yeah, November last year, I think, of October, November last year.
But congrats on
when
the.
you're having fun, so
Did you burn everything already, or?
No. We're good. We're good and on track. Still cash in the bank, plenty.
Fantastic. Look, maybe to start our short chat, can you describe what you guys do at Caracol, like in 2 minutes, and maybe explain a bit of where your center of gravity is in the world and why?
Yeah. So at Caracol, we provide large format advanced manufacturing solutions that combine two innovative technologies, robotics with additive manufacturing and eventually finishing technologies connected to it to produce large-scale parts. And large-scale parts that range from highly regulated industries, transportation, boats. You can see in the back some of the examples, parts for aircraft, custom automotive. So components that range from half a meter, up to 10, 15 meters in the largest configurations of our machines, as well as also recycled materials and recycled components for the construction and what we call creative industries, retail industry, hotel, hospitality, entertainment, where one-offs and complex geometries come into place, and this technology enables a new digital way of production thanks to this technology. We provide integrated hardware and software platforms, so an ecosystem of technology that basically enables the customer from identifying the applications, understanding how they do it today, and then run a business case and internalize the technology, and then train and scale in a distributed manufacturing model, meaning digitally connected machine deployed close at the point of use in order to eliminate the logistics of these parts that is very heavy and impactful, both on a cost, time, and sustainability level. And then, of course, allows to ship files and produce them close to the point of use in order to enable distributed manufacturing model. Our center of gravity is between, we would say, a lot more between Europe and the US. We were born in Milan, and we have close to Milan our headquarters and our research center for the European market. And then we have our headquarters for the North American market and a local factory where we deliver made in North America machines in Austin, Texas, as well as a network of partners that cover more than 30 countries that provide technical support and commercial solutions to our customers globally.
Okay, no, thank you for that. So just to summarize in a very simplistic way, so I manufacture boats. To take your example, I need a big piece of to build my boat. So I'm calling you. I'm telling you, okay, I need that, and you would say, okay, we can do that for you. And what you would provide is essentially you would give me the actual machine to, let's say, print them myself with the entire infrastructure and connection and network that needs to be put in place for me to have the impression of clicking one button and then I have my piece.
That typically, yes. I would say if we have to be simplifying the process that it is, I think there is an important step before that is understanding how you're doing it today and whether it makes sense to do it this way. How do you adapt the production, run an actual business case, so demonstrate that actually works, and then eventually scale the production. Exactly what you said. Technology transfer, technology is internalized. We train our customers, we help them, and then support them in scaling internally. So more or less, it was quite accurate.
And so, can you give me a sense of the scale today? I mean, growth, customers, countries. I mean, you mentioned the US. Why not start in the US in the first place? I mean, where are the clients mostly?
Yep. We have clients in 50 countries, but I would say that like 40% of our business today is North America, like for US, Mexico, Canada in general. And then I think Europe is the second market with a similar size. And then the rest is Middle East, Asia Pacific, specifically UAE, Saudi, and Australia, Japan being the leading markets in this ecosystem. But the good thing about this technology in this segment is that is fairly global. With our few providers with a relatively new segment. So our customer base range from North Africa to Vietnam, like literally everywhere in 50 different countries.
So how come really? Because I I mean, so if I'm selling a piece of software, like, I can see that I can sell, this piece of software in France, in Germany, in the US, blah, 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 for everywhere. But maybe I'll try to be, focused. For your market, why does it make sense to essentially have that, global approach? I mean, why are your clients, all over the place? And couldn't you find enough clients, maybe first in Italy, then in Europe, to then look at, going elsewhere?
I think it starts from the fact that no one was doing this before we started it. So it was a real white space. So we took charge and led together with a couple of other companies globally. So as of today, in our segment, you find few global leaders doing that. And I think that helped the segment mature. It's quite normal at the beginning that you have a couple of champions that are starting as a segment and then actually bringing it globally. Why did we brought it globally? Because I think, especially when you develop high-tech technology for manufacturing, the global supply chains are very much integrated. And therefore, especially when you go in, I would say, like a niche, a segment like ours that is growing a lot, but it started as a niche at the beginning, there is a global need and there is only a few providers. So those ones that really want to scale that niche really need to be global. And I think in the interview of Daniele before, he was kind of saying that in different way. Of course, they offer different solutions, but it was similar to us. I think it is at the beginning, you start looking for providers all over because you need to find one, and there are very few ones in the world. But then who wins is the one that becomes local, even as a global brand. And that's why, for example, we decided to expand in the US with a local manufacturing. We are the only ones in our industry that have both the production facilities, one in the US and one in Europe, because we believe that building a global business is the way to actually achieve the distributed manufacturing model of microfactories deployed all over the world, our robots deployed all over the world, integrated by data sharing and learning from each other through software. But at the same time, you need to be local for support. You need to be close to your customers. You need to show up in front of them. And in order to fully capture the differences between the different countries, cultural and also industrial differences that there are. That's why we decided to build globally, because it was kind of a necessity. If you want to be a technology leader, you need to do that. But at the same time, the choice to have this local approach is actually to be then close to the customer when you need to support them in this process.
So you decided almost straight away to go abroad. If I'm saying straight away, because I think you started almost on your own, but like 8 years ago or something like this.
Yeah.
And you did a lot of research and development for quite some time, and then like the moment when it picked up, and then at that moment you said, okay, we go to the US, we put facilities in the US straight on.
So we started in Italy. In 2016, we started exploring additive. We knew it was too small. We understood that we had to find a solution to bring it to another scale. Had the intuition of combining with robotics and developed the first prototype of this innovative technology. Realized straight away that Italy is a good training country for manufacturing technology, because there's a deep engineering know-how. A lot of different industries. It's good for aerospace, it's good for automotive, it's good for maritime. So you can find a good product market fit. We tested product market fit with the Italian market that is fairly small compared to a US one, of course, but at the same time, it's very diversified. So you can try different segments. It's good for design and construction anyways. So we found good talent and good market conditions to test our solution. While doing that, I had the luck that I was doing my MBA at Columbia University in the US. I did a market study there. I understood that was going to be the white space for us. There were not so many competitors doing what we wanted to do, but a lot of need from similar industrial companies. And so we knew kind of that the end game was going to be, if we wanted to build a global champion, to conquer that market. And I have studied at work in the US, so I knew that if we wanted to win and build a strong competitive advantage as a European company, eventually then exporting that in the US, we had to be local. And it's not okay only to have a sales guy that goes in front and says, okay, buy this very expensive equipment, and then goes away with the order, and you're supported from Italy with a different time zone, with a different cultural approach, with different needs. So we decided then, okay, we will validate our business in Italy and in Europe, but one day the first international expansion is going to be in the US, and we had to do it by really committing. So we built a plan. After my MBA, there was a bit of COVID. And then when we were ready, we raised our Series A. And with our Series A, we expanded in the US.
Okay. And so as a business, I mean, you provide software, but and you build software, but you're also very much hardware. I mean, I was talking to different space, but like to a founder of a battery company, which was saying the problem with battery or hardware businesses, like when you want to expand, when you want to grow, you need more money. It's not like software where you pay to have the software and then you ship it everywhere, sort of. So is that the case for you? I would assume yes, but
I think yes. In general, why did we raise so much? Because in order to scale, I'll try to explain how when we started this from zero, the first step was we need to create validation of applications. So we need to make sure this technology is accepted in highly regulated industries. It makes sense. There are business cases. So for 5 years, basically, we operated as a service model. So we used our technology to produce and validate production with key OEMs because that was creating the market need and was doing product market fit. So after 5 years, in which we didn't sell any single robot, even though our core business was developing those robots, we had a lot of use cases validated, a lot of key references and supply chain that were accepting our machines. And then we moved to phase 2. Phase 2 was building the fleet. And that was we are becoming a hardware-heavy company. So we are putting together reliable systems that we need to deploy that should be easy to use for our customers. And now we are in the phase in which we are scaling this fleet. Because the first step is to create the network of robots all over the world, and they need to be used by our users. They need to be connected. And then there is the third step, is actually to run the fleet and improve its performance and its integration through software and through data. So in the first phase, we raised a lot because we had to build an hardware business. We had to do a lot of R&D. We have to do support. So absolutely, yes, you're right. And now what's happening is that also we are starting to see the pickup of the fleet, and the monetization of that fleet is helping us in improving the fleet without having to raise that much capital anymore. That's why, for example, our Series B was mainly funding expansion initiatives and not anymore actually burning cash or working capital in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. And so for you, but you already have a foot in the States. What would have to happen for you to essentially move Caracol completely to the US? And some have said if you want to conquer the US, I mean, the founder needs to go.
I've heard this quite a lot of time.
So what's your take on this? Are you packing your suitcases ready to go? Ready to go to the US?
I think I'll start answering to the first one. What it takes to move everything to the US. I think in the end, for me at least, the way I see it, we do it because we have a mission. I imagine the world producing at least some parts. I don't think that is going to happen on everything, but on some specialty large-scale parts, that is still a sizable and important part of a lot of the supply chains. We need a distributed model of production. Those long supply chains, buying from very big factories, leveraging only economies of scale from far away, are failing because of war, because of geopolitical tensions, because of pandemics. We have been demonstrated in the past 5 years that this is not sustainable anymore. So I believe in that vision. I do that job for that vision. Caracol exists for that vision. In order to achieve that vision, you cannot focus only on one region. You really need to have a global network, a global business. So if you ask me, are you ever going to move everything to the US and focus only on that market? The answer is going to be no. The answer is going to be that the US is the largest industrial market in highly regulated industries for which we need to be leader. And it needs to be a significant and important part. But I believe in the integration, for example, of that leadership in an Atlantic positioning, in an integration between the industrial supply chain of Europe and the US and the allies of NATO, for example, if we talk, for example, defense, not because of military reasons, but because of industrial reasons. There are deep connections between these supply chains that we cannot just pretend that they don't exist anymore because there is geopolitical tension. We need each other to build a global technological advantage. And right now, it's more important than ever. Therefore, my answer to you is that absolutely, the US is going to be market number one. It has an internal demand and I think an attitude towards embracing technology that Europe needs to learn from. But competencies and capacity are a lot in Europe. US is relying a lot on European manufacturing. That's why I think, as of today, our key competitive advantage lays in the fact that we have these two main souls that are communicating with each other, learning from each other, and enabling the global business. In terms of me moving to the US, it's an option. I'm actually in the US almost as I am in Europe, mostly flying back and forth. So I do more than 60 flights a year, very long ones. That is part of the game. I don't think I shall move there yet for the same reason. The CEO needs to be where the business is, where the people are, where the value is created. Therefore, as of today, we're creating value and the people are. So I'm doing ping pong. In the moment in which value is shifting, I'm going to follow value. My job is only to deliver the value, to help delivering the value that the company is promising. And therefore, my logistics is going to be connected to that.
No, make a lot of sense. And so, it's quite. I mean, do you have a family? Like, I mean, it's a tough.
Not yet, kids. Yeah, not yet. I have an amazing girlfriend that is very patient. And so,
well, I hope she will listen to that. Okay, and so like just as a curiosity, like how did you essentially found like the problem in the market which you are solving now, really?
I think it started from Giovanni and Paolo, the two technical co-founders. They literally they dropped out of their masters and they fell in love with additive manufacturing. So it all started with additive manufacturing is an amazing technology. They were designers. From the designer perspective, it was unlocking somehow an idea of production without molds and everything that was kind of something very significant for them. But straight away, they realized it was, as a designer, you want to print a table, you want to do interior design. It was too small and too limited because of the 3-axis. So as a need, they had straight away the intuition, like if we want to use that as a tool for us, for our interest, for our products, it does not work. We need to scale it. Luckily, we found on the way someone that when we were brainstorming on how could we scale that process, the approach was building more and more countries, these big rooms that were still limited in geometries. And we found that robotics were basically cheap, deployable, already accepted in a lot of industrial spaces, and they had the flexibility to be scaled and to play on different geometries. And so we were landed our first robot, bootstrapped the first technology, and then said, okay, maybe there is something here. We need to test it on the market. And then while doing that, I was at BCG before as a consultant. I was working in aerospace lines, automotive lines, and I was seeing that when you were crafting large parts, it was very manual. The problem was the people. The plant directors of the places where I was visiting, they were saying, I don't find enough people actually to scale this process. The composite industry today is suffering. They cannot capture all the growth they have because they don't find skilled people to laminate by hand the parts. And so I said, okay, maybe automation through our technology can give that relief and help enabling scale. And so under that assumption, we kept on developing and testing the market, and we found that the problem was real, and then launched, basically.
Okay. No, super. I mean, thank you so much for on that note. Sorry, we're already at the end of our little chat, but thank you so much for your time, Francesco.
It's a pleasure.
And all the best with traveling back and forth between Milan and Austin. I truly hope you will remain Italian by heart.
I'll wait for you in Milan then. Ciao.
Grazie. Ciao, ciao. Well, next guest on the show is an investor coming back. So Hillel, hi, how are you?
Hey, Thomas, I'm good. Thanks. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. But thank you for coming back, really, for another sort of format. Always nice to have you back, really. So
awesome. Great to be here.
So super quick intro, but I don't think you really need any introduction, really. But so you're managing director of Kennet Partners, a leading growth equity firm based in the UK with offices in the US. You specialize in finding super capital efficient software businesses and helping them grow, which very often comes from international expansion and US expansion. But really, I think I did like like half of your job there, but like in 2 minutes, if you could like maybe elaborate a bit more like on on Kennet and explain like maybe like your one or two like specificities that would be helpful.
Cool. No, you did a great job of giving the background. So thank you. I think maybe to add a couple of points. So, we're hyper-focused on capital-efficient companies. So these are businesses that have got to, some level of scale without reliance on external capital. And we really love these companies because they tend to be very customer-centric. They have to satisfy the customer in order to get revenue. It's not about raising capital from investors. The founders spend money well. I mean, this is a really a big one. If you've been sort of starved of capital and every decision you're making, is a kind of a critical point when you raise capital in significant sums, you tend to maintain that discipline. And life is more straightforward with simple cap tables and that sort of thing. So we've been doing this for a long time now. We continue to do it. And then, I mean, obviously the subject here is international expansion. That's really a key angle that we're focused on. It's a major vector for value creation. There's lots of ways to do it. But most of the times when companies are choosing to work with us, it's because of our focus on international expansion.
No, super, thanks. I mean, so going to the US, I mean, so you're backing capital efficient companies, so companies that are not spending a crazy amount of money to grow. But at the same time, I had the impression that if you were going to the US, you had to be ready to essentially sign checks everywhere. And how do you reconcile those that view with the businesses you back? When they go, I mean, what happens? I mean, do you tell them, okay, you need to be ready to spend? Or...
I mean, the way I think about it, capital efficiency is a foundation upon which you build, your values, your strategy, your approach. It's like, once we have that in place, then we can be more aggressive on spending and investing capital. So you're absolutely right. It's not like we invest in capital efficient companies and we don't want them to ever spend any money. We invest in capital efficient companies that have discipline around spending money, enough discipline that you can put, $20, $30 million on the balance sheet and, feel comfortable that money is going to be deployed effectively. That's really how we think about this kind of shift. And, founders react differently to having a lot of money. Some folks feel like I now have a war chest and I'm never going to spend this, and and other folks feel like, well, I'm going to invest super aggressively and I now have, an infinite sum of capital. And the answer is really somewhere, in between. You want to significantly scale the company, but in an efficient and disciplined way. And the US, as you mentioned, is a great way to spend it, right? It's there's not a lot of cheap options to have a really successful US expansion.
And so you have offices in the US too. I mean, when you get like a European company, I mean, is the first market the US, or you look at Europe too when it comes to expanding?
So I'd say in the majority of cases, the US is the first key market we want to expand into. All things being equal. So this is a software or applied AI product that can be deployed, anywhere. I'd say in some cases, businesses will have some revenue in France, Germany, across the UK. But if you want to really expand, it's going to be the US. Now, there are certain markets where the US is different to Europe. For example, we were shareholders in a business called Dext, which is an accounting automation platform leveraging AI. Business scaled, probably grew north of 10x over our holding period. They expanded into Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and that had to do with how financial reporting was done in those markets. And in order at that point in time, things have moved on since then. To expand to the US, it required more changes to the product than other markets did. But I'd say that is sort of an outlier case. In general, you want to focus on the US. And I'd say there's other areas where you just want to build in Europe because you want to be the European business, the category leading European business that the big US acquirer is going to, is going to target. And so, I mean, another example, we were investors in a company called Remelia, which is an cash allocation credit forecasting business, competing with folks like High Radius and others. And our view there was actually, if you're the UK and European market leader, you're going to be very attractive to US buyers. And that is a strategy that we chose to take rather than attacking the US directly, because that would have been a much bigger and more significant challenge to take on. So those are more outlier cases. I'd say in the majority of cases, it's like, we have a great product, we're getting some traction in the US, and we really want to build on that success.
Okay, that makes sense. And so when you invest, I mean, does the company need to be ready for international expansion? Or do you know that you will first invest, then spend maybe 3-6 months to get the company ready, and then go? And what are like the key? What is essentially the checklist before you can say, okay, we are ready to go?
So I guess there's 2 points. The first is, what do we look for when we invest? And the second is, okay, once we're invested, what do we have as a plan to expand? So, I mean, in terms of what do we look for when we're investing, the first thing is we want to see some evidence of US traction. And so this is maybe inbound demand from US customers. We've got, it doesn't need to be very significant, but we've got some customers maybe, an increasing proportion of net new customers are coming from the US. If there is no US traction at all, and goals and plans and dreams to kind of go to the US without any validation, that's going to be a tough strategy for us to back. Now, we may still invest in that company, but we will discount the US expansion because there isn't really any proof points. So we really want to see some element of demand in the US already. And I mean, clearly, the more there is, the better, and the more conviction we feel that you are ready for a successful US expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then you invest, right? Now, these companies often, particularly if they're bootstrapped, they could have half their revenues coming from the US, but they may have 0 team members in the US, and everyone is in Europe. So then the question is, well, how do we really accelerate and build on the US expansion? And that it involves how do we think about team? How do we think about the CEO location? How do we think about product positioning? How do we think about customer referenceability in the US? Because just having customers in the US is actually not enough, right? We can't just go there and start selling. So there's those sort of 2 different points in terms of what do we want to see, and then once we're in there, how do we want to roll out in the US market?
And so do you think it's a requirement for you, like for any serious US presence, to have a team there? Because I imagine, like, I'm a bootstrap business, 50% of my business comes from the US. But I'm like, okay, for customer service, it's a bit annoying because I have to wake up early or to go to bed later. But essentially, I wouldn't say it's such a bad situation to be in. I mean, I'd be pretty happy. So at what point are you saying, okay, it's mandatory to have some people there, some senior people there?
So let me put it this way. If you have no US presence and you haven't invested a lot in the US, and you've got 30, 40, 50% of your customers in the US, it says a lot about your product, right? You got to have a great product if big US logos are going to go with you in spite of the fact that you have no CS in the US, etc. So, I mean, the way I think about it, it's just you're leaving a lot on the table if you're not having a presence in the US. Yeah, you're doing well, but you could be doing so much better if we had a US presence. And we have a number of companies that are in this exact position, right? Doing super well, but the teams are still in Europe. They've started to hire some folks in the US market, and our advice is we really want to build presence in the US. And heard the earlier speaker talking about spending a lot of time in the US. I think he said he did 60 flights a year. I mean, like, so position A is the CEO is going to move to the US, but that's like the highest likely to have a positive impact on the US expansion. Next is, well, maybe the CEO is going to spend 6 months in the US, or the CEO is spending every 2 weeks a month in the US, etc. But the extent to which the CEO or founder or one of the key founders is going to move to the US is a really big vector for success, and we would always encourage it. Now, you can do well in Europe, right? It just means you got a great product. You're probably working really hard, but you can really do a lot better by having that real presence in the US market. And also, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around valuation multiples and exit multiples and that kind of stuff. If you want to push for premium multiples, you need to hit a lot of kind of key talking points. You need like financial performance, you need kind of AI defensibility, and do you pass the prompt test question. But like, are you known in the US, right? Do you have like board members connected to large acquirers? Do you have partners in the US who you built a relationship with, as opposed to the situation where, hey, we're a great business with a great product, learn about us, and then pay a lot of money for us. The more boxes you can tick in terms of all of those aspects, the more you push that multiple up.
Yeah, interesting. So you can't say you're a US business if that they look at your LinkedIn company page and they see no one there. It's true that it's a bit weird. I mean, what is like? I mean, most like Europeans, I mean, including myself. I mean, when I read like things, it feels that the US market is super easy to sell. Like it's a very, very big commitment because you need. I mean, as you said, you probably need to go there or to go there often. So if you have a family, it's a bit complicated. It's a big commitment. You need to hire people there, so they cost more, so more money, etc., etc. But I forgot my question.
Well, I think what you're kind of alluding to, what I would say is like, when you win in the US.
No, like the easiness. Okay, sorry. So it's a big commitment, but like with this idea of being super easy, like how hard or how easy is it really like in practice? Because I'm sure, I mean, it can't be so easy, otherwise like most people would go.
Okay, so put it this way, right? Like when you win in the US, you win big. So it's just uncapped in terms of the scale that you can get to if you can hit product market fit and scale in the US. So that's why it's worth making the bet. Now, is it easy? It is not easy, right? It is not easy. It depends on a bunch of facts. I mean, our approach is we want to there's a bunch of kind of playbooks we want to put in place, and boxes you want to tick to sort of de-risk it or so, and that reduces the risk of failure, right? But ultimately, you need to in a way probably find product market fit again, or at least find positioning fit again. You need to compete with local players who may have inferior products but have deeper, more deeply embedded in the market. You need all of the referenceability, etc. So there's no question that it is not an easy thing to do, but it's worth doing because as I say, when you win big.
But I think you did. I mean, a few years ago, I mean, I watched like a very old interview you gave for.
I said the opposite thing.
Espresso Capital. No, where you said the US is easier to scale than scaling across Europe.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, do you still think the same or?
Absolutely. So the way I sort of think about it is, once you've got that product market fit in the US, you have a single uniform market that you can just go in, right? Like we know what each salesperson, what they can hit in terms of quota. It's predictable. We can hire more, and like each incremental hire, the marginal addition in terms of net new ARR is probably going to be similar to the prior one, right? Because it's a uniform strategy. Whereas if I'm going to do France, Germany, Spain, Italy, that's not the case, right? Once I get to like 12 reps in Spain, now I'm going to expand into France, my 13th rep, the marginal net new addition of ARR is going to be lower because it's a different market. So there's no question that scaling in the US is easier than scaling in Europe, but finding that initial product market fit and those first few kind of key wins is harder to do than than in European markets. But so it's like why would you go for the smaller markets unless there's a really compelling reason to do so? Now that being said, right, if you're a business, you're a UK business, and you've got 15% in Spain, 20% in Germany, 10% in France, there's nothing wrong with expanding more into those markets, right? Because you're not taking more risk to expand because you may have some quota carriers already, you've got some reference customers there, and the trade-off is, okay, I'm going to go from 10 to 30 million in Europe, versus I'd go maybe from 10 to 50 million in the US, but there's more risk around there. It's a new market, so there's kind of a a trade-off. But all things being equal, there's no question that the US is kind of more attractive than doing Europe market by market.
Yeah, I mean, there are also a few reports, like noted GP Bullhound's European SaaS report. Point 9 Capital also has done a report essentially showing that listed stock in the US, I mean, trade at a massive premium compared to the European ones. And what part, I mean, as an investor, I mean, I guess the more like levers you have in your bag, the happier you are. But what I don't know if you can put a weight, but is going to the US for value creation in terms of business, or more for like the premium you can get at exit?
No, it's definitely more for value creation, right? You can be bigger, you can grow faster, and that in addition to the fact that you've done well in the US is going to increase your value. But I think yeah, it's not just about being there, right? It's about the benefits to your financial performance that you can get, that I think is the real driver.
Okay, thanks. One last question, I mean, to finish our little chat. I mean, I know you're an investor, I mean, and your role is to provide value to your own investor wherever they are. So, but with that topic of sovereignty and, how we can essentially beef up the European ecosystem, what do you think has to be done in order to scale European businesses but not lose them to the US? Meaning that, center of gravity is completely moving west. They start relocating headquarters. They start, I mean, if they become a huge listing in the US, etc. What do you think has to really change?
Look, I think that in the first instance, the kind of regulatory framework, incentives, government incentives, all of that kind of stuff needs to be more attractive, right? There needs to be a more compelling reason to stay in a European market than to go into the US. And in a number of areas, Europe is less business friendly, right, than the US in terms of some markets around labor laws and taxation entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I know there's a lot of work being done in terms of trying to unify some of this to make it easier, which I think is great. But I think it's going to take a concerted effort, and a lot of it is about just driving incentives through the regulatory framework. But ultimately, the question that kind of government needs to answer is like, if you're building a business, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're building a business. You're ultimately focused on creating as much value as possible. And so there really needs to be viable alternatives in Europe in terms of acquirers to say, I'm not going to sell to a big US company. I'm going to sell to a European alternative. And there's more these days, and I think that's very positive. But I'd say this is not an easy problem to solve, and it's going to take a while to do it. But I think at a minimum, just creating the incentives to make folks more interested in kind of staying because they can do better in Europe, I think is kind of a starting point. But I think with AI and data, I mean, I think that is a compelling narrative now that is going to play well to European companies. I think it's a positive in terms of that aspect.
Okay, well, look, thank you so much. I mean, on that note, we are ending the show for today. So, Hillel, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure, as usual. And,
awesome, yeah, great to talk to you as always, and hope the rest of the session goes well.
Thank you. Cheers.
Awesome. Bye.